What's going on, Cheat Code Sports Fantasy Football Podcast listeners? You got Kevin, Stevie P coming at you. What's going on, Steve?
What's going on, world? What's going on, Kev?
Same old, brother. Dan is dealing with the family on this one, so we are going to move along with the next division. We are doing the AFC South, and we are going to start you guys off with the Colts and Jaguars. So let's get into it. First off, the Colts, of course, they have a new quarterback in town, Phillip Rivers. Steve, how do you feel about Phillip Rivers' fantasy value this year?
Yeah, I actually like Phillip Rivers. He's the kind of guy that we kind of talked about, on the last podcast I was on when we were talking about, Joe Burrow and the guys like that, where if you take a Phillip Rivers, because you're the last guy taking a quarterback, I would feel confident having Rivers on my team. This team just has a good amount of weapons that I feel like Phil can get you, a consistent 15 to 20 fantasy points every week, and I don't have to worry about him. Last year we did see him throw a lot of interceptions toward the end of the season, but in the beginning of the season he was actually really good. So I feel like Phillip Rivers is a kind of guy that will get you the amount of points that you need to get you by, and then you can just go with, guys that we were talking about in the couple podcasts, Joe Burrow, maybe he lights the world on fire, and, just other guys that we can go attack and see, hey, maybe this guy lights the world on fire, and, I have Phillip Rivers just in case he doesn't.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Colts team, they're just a well-rounded bunch of good players. They don't have that superstar jump off the page. I guess T.Y. Hilton would be the closest guy, but they don't have that jump off the page superstar. They just got a lot of really good football players around Phillip Rivers, and they have a great coach. Frank Reich I think I've said that probably more than anything else on this podcast that I ever said. Frank Reich is a good coach. I say it every time we talk about the Colts. I think that if Phillip Rivers keeps his turnovers down, which Frank Reich is going to play a major part in, he's going to be very fantasy relevant, throughout this year. They are going to run the ball a lot. That is kind of a staple of Frank Reich's offense. He's done it the past couple of years, but, Rivers does have a good amount of weapons. They brought in Michael Pittman Jr. Paris Campbell's going to come back healthy this year. He's still got T.Y. Hilton. Zach Pascal was very good last year when he got his chance. Jack Doyle's the tight end there. He could step up and be a very good player. They have a lot of talent, I think, on this team that could make Phillip Rivers very successful. And yes, if you're going to draft Phillip Rivers, you probably don't even need. You can probably take Phillip Rivers and Drew Lock, Joe Burrow, Gardner Minshew, Daniel Jones. You could take those guys, not Daniel Jones. I think he's being drafted a little earlier. But the other three guys with Phillip Rivers, you could probably take as your last two picks right before your kicker and defense. And know that you're probably in a good position, because I think Phillip Rivers is probably going to be, I don't know if he's going to be a QB1, but he's going to give you solid QB production, and if that just gives you the hope that one of that other guy that you draft with him could be that blow up quarterback that takes, that winds up being that Mahomes or Jackson from this year.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the congested running back, congested backfield for this team. We were doing a podcast on Friday night after the first round of the draft. We were going through, the entire first round, what picks we liked, and, Steve and I both just cringed when it got to Indianapolis and they took Jonathan Taylor, because we were like, God, they have Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack's a very good player. Steve and I both like Marlon Mack. We think he's, an above average running back. Right now, Taylor is going 25 amongst running backs, Mack 35 amongst running backs. How do you, if you had to, give your opinion on how this season was going to start off, how do you think it's going to play out? Do you think it's going to be Mack to begin and then Taylor finishes? Do you think it's going to be a 1-2 punch? How do you think?
Honestly, okay, so I know Jonathan Taylor's going a lot earlier, and I think it has more to do, like we talked about, with ADP and Dynasty and everything. He's the Dynasty back there, so a lot of the ADPs that we're seeing is Dynasty related. But as we get closer to the season, I think we're going to see that Marlon Mack is the number one guy. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get some carries, definitely. without a doubt. And Naeem Hines, I think with Phillip Rivers being the quarterback there, is just a lock for 60 receptions this year. I
Yeah,
mean,
dude, we were going to get into Naeem Hines separately because
yeah,
I think of all these running backs, he's the best value.
yeah. And I mean, to me, he's almost a lock for 60. So I just feel like Marlon Mack is on the last year of a contract. Why not run him into the ground and then you have your guy for the next 4 years. Well, you took him in the first round, so you got your guy for the next 5 years if you want him.
No, well, second round. They took him second round.
Okay, second round. So I mean, Jonathan. Yeah, you're right, Jonathan Taylor. So in the second round, you still got him for 4 years. You know what I mean? You can let Marlon Mack, beat him to the ground basically, and then just let him go. Kind of do a DeMarco Murray from a couple of years ago, and let Jonathan Taylor spell him. Now, if Jonathan Taylor comes in and he lights the world on fire, then obviously it's going to be, in a situation where you're going to see a whole lot more split. But to me, this is more like a Chris Carson, Rashard Penny situation than it is a, I'm trying to think of a situation where we thought one guy was the guy and then it ended up just not being it. And nothing comes to mind right now, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where Jonathan Taylor is going to just take Marlon Mack's job. I think Marlon Mack has proved that when healthy, he is a very good running back. Health is the main concern for me for Marlon Mack more than it is him losing his job straight up to, a rookie running back.
Yeah, I'm like so up in the air, and I kind of feel the same way you do. I think that Marlon Mack is probably going to be the guy that has the job to start the season. One of the things about Jonathan Taylor that has been, kind of emphasized, and, was emphasized throughout the draft process was he got a lot of carries in college. Like was he the starter from year one or was he a starter from sophomore? I know he basically was getting
year one starter.
Yeah,
he has a lot of carries.
He has 1,000. He has almost maybe over 1,000 touches in his college career. Like he got a lot of work. I think it's close to. I don't think it's 1,000, but I think it's like in the upper 900s. But this could just be a year where they, kind of slow him down, let his body recuperate from that workload and keep him healthy. And like you said, just run Mac into the ground where, we know what we have in Mac. We'll let him go after this season. We have our guy for the future. And, I agree. I like Mac's value a lot better than I like Taylor's value. A lot of people right now are drafting Taylor, 2-3 rounds ahead of Mac in these mock drafts. And, for me, that's a mistake. I think, honestly, that's one thing that I've tried to do is actually pair them. If I can go 4th and 7th round with Taylor and Mac or 5th and 7th round with Taylor and Mac, I kind of love it because I don't mind getting that backfield. I know one of them is going – I think it's going to be clear. Like this is going to be a situation I think we'll see as clear. I think if Taylor's the better player, we're going to see Taylor on the field. If Mac has the job, we're going to see Mac on the field. I think, the other guy will spell him, the other guy from time to time, but I think it's going to be they're, going to go – these two guys here and there, the better player is going to be on the field or the starter is going to be on the field more. And, of course, Hines is going to, be on the field for third down. And that's who I want to get into now because Naeem Hines is the 59th running back off the board. I love drafting Naeem Hines. Like, I draft Naeem Hines probably 3 rounds earlier than what anybody else is ready to draft him because – like, do we not see what Phillip Rivers did to Austin Eckler's career? I mean, that's Austin Eckler. Naeem Hines is Austin Eckler 2.0. Like, that's, he's not as big, but, he's going to just be there for checkdowns all day. He's going to get 4 or 5 catches in almost every game. It's going to happen. So, to me, I love drafting Naeem Hines that late, knowing that I'm going to have a PPR machine.
Yeah. I mean, if you just... This is the thing. Okay, so last year he had 92 receptions, Austin Eckler. And the reason I'm bringing Austin Eckler up is obviously because Phillip Rivers is now with the Colts. He had 92 receptions. The year before that, he had 39 receptions. But if you remember, he got hurt because he spelled – I can't remember what game it was, but he came in, got hurt, was out for a couple of weeks. But regardless – yeah, I mean, the dude had a bunch of targets, and the year that he got 39 receptions, Melvin Gordon had, I think it was like 61. So that's 90 something receptions. You know what I mean, between the two of them. So we already know Marlon Mack really is not the pass catching back in this system at all. Like, they rarely throw him the ball. He's rarely had receptions. So if Eckler comes in and is the guy that Phillip Rivers, is using on third downs, and he's going to be the third down back all year long, I love Austin Eckler. I love Nyheim Hines. I think Nyheim Hines has I just think he has like a 60 reception floor. And if he gets, let's say he gets,
I think that's his floor.
Yeah, I think he has a 60 reception floor. And if that's his floor, and you're going to give me another, let's be generous and say he gets 50 carries, because, it's just, they're going to give him some carries. He's just not going to be he's not going to be a no carry guy in just reception. So let's say he has 50 receptions and 60 receptions and 50 rushes. To me, that's a guy that you can throw in, especially on like a bye week, or, if injury, and know that he's going to get you in a PPR, probably, close to 5 to 10 points easily. And if he scores you a touchdown, it's like, great. And if he is like this blow up receiving back that everybody thinks he could be, the dude could have 80 receptions, and then you got a RB3 that you got in basically round 13. Like, to me, that's awesome.
Dude, he had 52 carries last year. He had 44 receptions.
Yeah.
And that was like that's without Phillip Rivers, who we know is a check down king. And Marlon Mack got 14 catches on 17 targets. Like, they just don't throw Mack the ball.
Throwing the ball.
And Jonathan Taylor is the same thing. Like, he's not known for his pass catching ability out of the backfield. That was one of the knocks on him. So, yeah, I think I aim for Nyheim Hines in almost every draft that I do, because I know how late he's going, and I do think eventually people are going to start drafting him a little earlier as the season rolls around, because the more fantasy analysts you listen to, the more you're hearing that this guy checks the ball down like no other quarterback except maybe Tom Brady in the league. So, yeah, I love Nyheim Hines as a late round, PPR guy that I know is going to get me good points.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to T.Y. Hilton. Right now T.Y. Hilton is the 21st receiver off the board. I like T.Y. Hilton this year. I really do. I think, he, with Phillip Rivers at the helm, we know how Phillip Rivers likes to lock on to guys. We saw that with Keenan Allen. I think that T.Y. Hilton could have a very good year this year with Phillip Rivers. And that Phillip Rivers will air the ball out, which T.Y. Hilton is one of, he's great at, getting loose and getting downfield open. I do. I think with Phillip Rivers, I like T.Y. Hilton this year.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. I think T.Y. Hilton, to me, he's the best wide receiver on this team. It's not close. He is going to be a guy that, gets deep passes, gets intermediate passes. Like, that's the thing. A lot of people say about T.Y. that he is just like this deep ball guy. And if you watched him throughout his career, don't get me wrong, he scores deep touchdowns, but the guy runs a pretty extensive route tree. He's all over the field. I mean, he runs through the middle. He's not scared to run across the middle and catch footballs. Like, I love T.Y. Hilton. And other than last year, really, he didn't have, and we talked about this last year, that he doesn't really miss games. I mean, the guy has been pretty healthy his entire career, other than last year. So, to me, if he stays healthy all season long, which has only been a problem one season of his, what is he, in his 9th season now? So 1 out of 9, I'm going to take the odds that he's probably going to stay healthy, and he's going to be the, quite possibly the highest point scorer on the team. Because if Mack and Jonathan, Taylor are splitting carries, then, T.Y. might outscore them both. You know what I mean? T.Y., I love T.Y. I think T.Y. this year is a value, because I think a lot of people are sleeping on what he did last year with with really bad quarterback play. I mean? You can't look at what, this team was last year and say that, he was bad because X, Y, and Z. He was bad because he missed games, and then he just had really bad quarterback play. Like, to me, that's it. There's no other reason. I mean, Jacoby Brissett was just not good last year, and it hurt Ty. So it is what it is. I like Ty, and I definitely am drafting Ty like everywhere I can get him.
Yeah. So let's move on to the other receivers. Right now, Michael Pittman Jr. is the next receiver being drafted. I talked about Michael Pittman Jr. on when we talked about rookie wide receivers. I think it was just me and Dan on that podcast. I think Michael Pittman Jr. has a chance to be a monster. We've seen what what Mike Williams did. And they are very similar players. They are big. They are not the fastest guys in the world, but they are huge, big guys that can go up and get the ball. I see very similar production for Michael Pittman Jr. if given that opportunity. And with Phillip Rivers a quarterback, he's going to be. They're going to take shots down the field to him. This is another wide receiver late in the draft that I like taking a gamble on because, to me, out of the rookie wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, he's in a sticky situation with Cortland Sutton. CeeDee Lamb's got all those other guys around him. Justin Jefferson still got Thielen. The rookie wide receiver situation is pretty cloudy. And to me, I think Michael Pittman Jr. has one of the better opportunities, to finish as the best rookie wide receiver this year, fantasy-wise.
Yeah, I think he can score a lot of touchdowns. That's why I like him.
100%.
Yeah, I think, the reason they brought him in is because they needed a bigger body to score touchdowns. They also brought in Trey Burton, but, Trey Burton wasn't really a touchdown guy. Jack Doyle, he's been hit or miss in the touchdown department. Some games he goes off, but they don't really have that big body receiver that can go up and get the ball, and they finally did that with drafting, Michael Pittman Jr. So, to me, a guy that likes to kind of loft the ball up. We all remember the Antonio Gate years and how many times Phillip Rivers would hit Antonio Gates in the back of the end zone. If Michael Pittman could be that guy in this offense, then he's going to score touchdowns his rookie year. So, he's definitely, the second guy up that I would want off this Colts, wide receiver core.
All right, and that brings us to Paris Campbell. I want to know your feelings on Paris Campbell this year.
So to me, I think the more obvious choice to be the number 3 guy that I want on this team is Zach Pascal. I like Paris Campbell, but I almost feel like Paris Campbell is the T.Y. Hilton replacement. When T.Y. Hilton starts to show that he's slowing down more than he is the number 3 wide receiver on this team, because I don't think you draft Michael Pittman Jr. to not put him in the starting lineup. I think he's going to be in the starting lineup, and I don't think Paris Campbell showed enough last year through all the injuries and everything to really be a guy that they're going to be like, okay, we're going to put this guy right in the lineup. Like, he just didn't do enough last year to do that. So for me, I would like to see how that battle goes between those two, but I think that is a battle between Zach Pascal and Paris Campbell. So for me, I like Paris Campbell if he's the guy that becomes the third wide receiver, but I just think that Zach Pascal showed enough last year and the year before that he can be a consistent target for Phillip Rivers, and I think he's going to end up probably winning that job.
So you're thinking they're gonna have Pittman and Pascal on the outside with Ty in the slot?
Yeah, I think. They kind of move Ty around. The Ty kind of plays all over the place. So in 2 wide receiver sets, I think it'll be Pittman and Ty. And then in 3 wide receiver sets, I think they move Ty into the slot and have Pascal and Pittman on the outsides. Kind of just moving Ty because Ty is so versatile and just catches the ball everywhere that I think he is one of those players that is just like he's too good to keep off the field and too good with that when you put him in the slot role that he can just dominate a slot receiver. So I think that's probably the way it's going to end up playing out.
I actually like that a lot better. That makes me, if that winds up being the case, I like that a lot better for T.Y. Hilton. That makes me even more excited for T.Y. Hilton because, like I said, Phillip Rivers locks in on guys, and he locks in on Keenan Allen. Like, he was his guy, and Keenan Allen a lot of times came from that slot spot. I do. I think that if T.Y. Hilton gets that slot receiver role, man, he could have a big year.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, Jack Doyle is the tight end. We talked. They still got Moali Cox. They picked up Trey Burton. Jack Doyle to me is one of those tight ends that you can pick up at the end of your draft if you're picking up like three of those guys, hoping one breaks out. Jack Doyle is one that I never mind drafting. To me, he's really no different than Hunter Henry. I mean, Hunter Henry's a little more athletic, I think, than Jack Doyle, but to me, these guys could be very similar production. Like Hunter Henry is extremely overdrafted, in my opinion. He was not great at the end of last year. He had maybe 3 or 4 weeks, right before the fantasy playoffs where he was very good, and then he kind of died off in the fantasy playoffs. So to me, Jack Doyle is a very similar player, so I can see him giving you, 50 to 70 yards, a touchdown here and there. Possibly a guy finishing 10 to 12 if everything falls in right.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jack Doyle is just a really good receiving tight end. He showed that he can block. He's a good player, and you don't really. I feel like you don't really have to worry about Jack Doyle. Like, don't get me wrong, there's going to be weeks where he gets you a 3, a 4, a 5.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be other weeks where he gets you 12 to 18 because he scores a touchdown, gets 60 yards and 60 catches. So, or 6 catches. So, you know what I mean? He's a guy that I don't have no problem settling on. If I miss out on the top 4 guys, you know what I mean? I'll just wait and take Jack Doyle later, like Kev said.
All right, so let's move on to the defense. The Colts defense is number 16. They added DeForest Buckner, added Xavier Rhodes to the secondary. They did some additions in the offseason. How do you feel about the Colts D? Right now they're the number 16 defense, so they're not being drafted as a top number 1 defense.
Yeah, I really don't think Xavier Rhodes, from what we saw last year, makes this team any better.
No,
it doesn't make this team any better. He's the number 2. He'll be the number 2 corner behind Rock Ya-Sin, obviously, because Rock had a pretty good year last year, and even Marvin Tell had a pretty good year last year. Both of those guys were rookies. They brought them in last year. If anything, I think that the bringing in of Xavier Rhodes is to kind of bring those guys along. I thought, when they made that signing, Xavier Rhodes has been a top corner in the league for a long time. So he knows the position. He can help these guys grow into being better corners. So I think that's more of a coaching on the field decision than it is an actual, bringing Xavier Rhodes in to be, the number 2 guy. Because I thought Marvin Tell, Rock Ya-Sin was obviously the best, but Marvin Tell had a pretty good season last year. So if they move him into the slot and have Xavier in as the second, tight or cornerback, I think that the corners could be okay here. But honestly, they even bringing in DeForest Buckner, I just don't feel like they get enough sacks for me to be like, okay, you got to draft this defense. You know what I mean? I just don't feel like they are going to be able to pass rush the way you want a top 12 defense to get in there. So for me, I like the Colts as like a consolation prize at the end if you didn't get any of the top like 8 defenses and you're like, maybe with DeForest Buckner, they start getting to the quarterback more. But, hopefully I get a better defense than the Colts.
Yep. And kicker is Chase McLaughlin. He's not being drafted as the top, but to me, Chase McLaughlin could wind up being a very, very good kicker, for fantasy. We just talked, in our last podcast about, I think it was Joey Sly from Carolina. Joey Sly last year was the number 6 kicker in fantasy, but he's not even being drafted this year. And I think Chase McLaughlin could be similar, like one of those guys that eventually you're going to be adding because this offense is very good. They play indoors. Talk about that all the time. Good offenses indoors. And to me, this is actually the best because their offense isn't great. So they're could be settling for a lot of field goals. And like I said, they're indoors. So, Chase McLaughlin is definitely a guy that I think, over the season, people are going to be adding at the kicker position.
Yep.
All right. So let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Quarterback Gardner Minshew. Talk to me about Gardner Minshew, Steve.
All right. So I think I'm going to be drafting Gardner Minshew. Okay, so
Dude, it's crazy. Like I was just looking at Gardner Minshew's stats before we got on these podcasts, and I'm like, yo, he really only had two bad games
yeah,
in the beginning of the season.
he was
He had
good.
two bad games. He had the New Orleans game and then the Houston game, which was in London
Yeah.
right before their
Oh, that
bye
was
week
bad.
when they brought Nick Foles back. That was a terrible game, but he was in London, and I know they go to London every year. So, but like, dude, like Gardner Minshew was very good, and you add Laviska Shenault, and you still got Chris Conley, D.D. Westbrook, and of course DJ Chark. You add Chris Thompson, a receiving threat out of the backfield. Rockwell Armstead out of the backfield, and of course Fournette is there. Like he's got weapons, and yeah, I do. I think Gardner Minshew could be one of those breakout quarterbacks.
I agree. I mean, just okay. So he played 14 games. We know that, right? And the dude had 21 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. So it's not like he was turning the ball over a lot in the games where he was bad. In the games he was bad, he was just bad because they didn't play well as a team. Like they just didn't do anything. So like and this is the other thing, like he ran the ball a lot last year. Like what did he have? Almost 400 yards rushing, didn't he? He had like what is it? Let me see here. He had 344 yards rushing. So, that's not bad. I mean, you're talking about 34 fantasy points just for running. You know what I mean? He had 67 attempts. Like I just feel like the way he played last year, I mean, if you're looking at the game logs, right? In most of the games, the dude had over 225 passing yards. You know what I mean? He had 1, 2, 3, 4 games in a row where he didn't, at the end of the season where he didn't do much. And I think that's what's going to kind of sway people towards it. But if you look, he had a touchdown in every one of those games. He had 147 yards against the Bucks. The Bucks started coming on at the end of the year on defense, but he had 147 yards. He did have a touchdown. Then he had, against the Chargers, who are a very good defense, he had 162 yards and a touchdown. But in all the games that he was really, really bad, other than the Saints game where he was just horrible, he scored a touchdown in every game. Every game he started, he scored a touchdown.
The Texans
the Texans game.
Yeah.
Okay,
so both of those games. But I agree. Like my thing was like, even at the end of the season, he wasn't great. But like I just wrote in the article, that's on the website. Like, I think when they brought Nick Foles back, they just like kind of hurt his confidence a little bit, and he kind of had to build himself back up. If you look at that last week, and I know it's week 17, and they played the Colts, and neither one of those teams were a playoff caliber, but the guy goes off for 295, 3 touchdowns, and does have a pick, but you see what, like, if they let him just throw the ball around, like, he has that capability. I mean, to me, like Steve said, the only 2 games where he did not throw a touchdown were the 2 games that we mentioned, the New Orleans and the Houston game, and they were also half of his interceptions in those games. He had 3 interceptions in those 2 games.
Yep.
So he literally only had 2 bad games all year out of 14 as an undrafted rookie. So think about that. Like, this guy now has a year of experience under his belt. Like, I don't want to say the next Tom Brady, but just like the guy who, is like that last late round pick that can just be very good. Like, dude, Gardner Minshew can be a very solid quarterback in this league, and he's got weapons to do it. Like we just said. I mean, yeah, I think that he is a potential breakout candidate.
Yeah, I just like the weapons around him. You know what I mean? Like everybody you said, Laviska Shenault, and I feel like they added enough around this kid that they're going to find out if he's going to be the guy. Like this year, they're going to find out whether Gardner Minshew can be the quarterback for this team, and I like the weapons around him. So for me, I'm probably going to be drafting a lot of Gardner Minshew because I wait on quarterback like all day long. So I like what I saw last year, and the stats. To me, the stats are what they are. The dude threw a touchdown in basically every game but 2. So I'm gonna roll with that.
So there you have it. This podcast, we have talked about the 2 quarterbacks Steve will be drafting on all of his fantasy teams. All right, so we will move now to Leonard Fournette at running back. This is another situation like we kind of talked about with Marlon Mack, where Leonard Fournette is kind of in that last year of his contract. They did bring in passing backs, Chris Thompson. They have Jay Gruden as the coach, and obviously, Jay Gruden loves Chris Thompson to death. So that's probably going to eat into the receiving work we saw from Leonard Fournette last year, especially since Leonard Fournette wasn't really good. Like, he caught a lot of balls, but he was not good after the catch. He was basically just catching the ball and going down.
Literally.
So, you know, they might just run him into the ground, but they also probably want to see what they have in Gardner Minshew, knowing that next year they could be going into a draft where they want to take, Fields or Lawrence. So who knows? I mean, do they run him into the ground? Do they, is Leonard Fournette, right now he's the 15th running back off the board. Do you feel comfortable drafting Fournette there?
At 15, I think that's probably where I would take him, because last year he was be drafted as the very end of the first round. You know what I mean? He was beginning of the second round. I'd rather get him later, because I just feel like you said, with Chris Thompson coming in, he's going to get pass catching work, because Chris Thompson is a great pass catching running back. So Leonard Fournette showed none of that last year. Like, he literally was catching balls and being tackled immediately, like every time. I can't remember a run, and if we check the stats, I bet you we can't find one where he caught and ran for more than 20 yards. Like, that just didn't happen last year. It's almost like he was scripted, like, here you go, Leonard, we're gonna throw it to you right down the line of scrimmage, and you're gonna get tackled 5 yards upfield. Like, it was almost like an extension of the run game. You know what I mean? I felt like. So Chris Thompson is way more dynamic in the run game, in the passing game. Leonard Fournette, he would have to get 300 carries, you know what I mean, for me to be like, yeah, he has a possibility of being a top 12 guy. And I don't think he has really, with Chris Thompson coming to the, and I know Chris Thompson is not the pillar of health, but if he stays healthy all year, you know what I mean? Chris,
yeah, it is the truth.
You know what I mean? So if he stays healthy this year, and that's the other thing, like, Leonard Fournette is a 27-year-old running back. Like, it feels like he's been in the league for not a long time. It feels like just a couple of years, but he's already 27. So, I just don't see how Leonard Fournette ends up in the, as a number one running back. And I know people have said that, oh, Leonard Fournette could be really good this year. I don't see it. For me, I think 15 to 18 is probably right around where I'm going to be looking for Leonard Fournette.
All right, so he's being drafted before Todd Gurley. I know you're not doing that.
No way.
David Johnson, who I know you're high on, you're not doing that.
No way. Nope.
Le'Veon Bell.
That's really close. That's really close. But in PPR, I have to go Le'Veon. You know what? I take Le'Veon in both. Yeah, I'll take Le'Veon in both.
How about Melvin Gordon?
Ooh, that's much closer. I would probably take him ahead of Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think, the more I'm looking at it, I think I actually like Melvin Gordon a little bit better. So, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think I'm going to wind up with Leonard Fournette on too many of my teams. And, I mean, everything depends on where guys are being drafted and where, values are. But, this guy's going, beginning of the third round, sometimes second round, and I'm just not comfortable taking him ahead of some of these other names we just mentioned.
No, and this is the thing. Like, okay, so like we're talking about, right? He had 76 catches last year, right? Which the two previous years, you combine them, he didn't have 76 catches. He had 22 in 2018, and he had 36 his rookie year in 2017, right? The dude had 76 catches. So when I think 76 catches, I think maybe he got like 700 yards, 680, something like that. The dude had 522 yards on 76 catches, and he didn't score a touchdown.
Nope.
You know what I mean? Like, he never scored a receiving touchdown. How do you catch the ball 76 times and not by accident fall into the end zone? Like, he had three runs of over 20 yards. Or 3 receptions of over 20 yards, and never had a 40-yard run or a 40-yard reception last year. Like, to me, if you cut that number in half, right? You cut that 76 number in half and make that, let's say 35, let's say 38. You know what I mean? We'll cut it
38.
right in half, right?
Mm-hmm.
38. What does that give him receiving wise?
Probably
230 yards?
Yeah, 300 at the most. Yeah.
I mean, like that to me, that's just you're cutting half of his production, and you're cutting his production in half in the receiving totals. And do you think he's going to have more than 265 carries? I don't. I mean, like I think 265 is probably right around where he's going to be. 265, 280. So. Yeah, I don't know, and he doesn't. He scored 3 touchdowns last year.
That was gonna be my next thing. Like I think a lot of people what they say is where he, what he's going to lack in his pass production from last year. His pass production from last year. He's going to make up in touchdowns because obviously 3 is just
It's horrible.
It's unimaginable for a running back like him, who's a big bruiser, and they just didn't get the ball into the red zone that much to be able to score a lot of goal line touchdowns.
And this is my argument to the people that say that, like, oh, he's going to have way more touchdowns. His rookie year was his most touchdowns. He had 9, and then his sophomore year he had 5. Last year he had 3. Like, it's not like this guy has had a 12 touchdown season or a 15 touchdown season where you can be like, oh yeah, Leonard Fournette is just going to bounce back. He's going to be great. You can't say that. The dude had 2 years of less than basically 5 carries or 5 touchdowns or less. You know what I mean? Like, to me, if he gets up to 9, I'd be really, really happy with that. And even getting up to 9, that doesn't make up for the production he's losing in the receiving game. So I just think that Leonard Fournette is a good number 2 running back and nothing more. Like middle of the pack number 2 running back.
All right. So let's move on to the wide receiver position. DJ Chark. I love DJ Chark this year. Like you saw last year, he was, borderline 1,000 yards. And I think that last game he went over 1,000. That last game we talked about, Minshew was just airing the ball up, and I think that was part of the reason they wanted DJ Chark to get 1,000 yards. Like, this guy just came on so strong, as a rookie, or I'm sorry, as a second-year player. His rookie year, he was hurt, pretty much the whole year. Dude, this guy, to me, has the ability to be a very good receiver. His route tree is all over the place. He's very good down the field. He's very good, in intermediate routes. You can throw him the ball on screens and he can make plays. Like, to me, DJ Chark is really, really a very good receiver. I loved watching him play last year.
Yeah, I love DJ Chark. I basically picked up DJ Chark after week 1 everywhere I could get him. And
Dude,
it worked out. It worked out.
Tell me about it. So in our league, I actually drafted DJ Chark because our league is kind of deep. There's like 17, 18 rounds or something like that. So this goes a little deep. I actually drafted DJ Chark in the 14th round. And I made a trade after week 1. And it involved D.D. Westbrook. And I was like, just, Gardner Minshew's the guy now. I doubt he's just going to be throwing. Like, I think he's just going to be checking down the DD, and I released DJ Chark. Steve picked him up, and yeah, I'm very mad at myself. I was very mad at myself for that because I was like, you know how high I was on DD Westbrook last year in general. So when I got DD Westbrook in that trade, I was like, I like DD, but I wasn't going to keep both Jacksonville receivers on my team with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Needless to say, I released the wrong one.
Yeah, like what I saw out of DJ Chark last year is very comparable to what we saw out of Kenny Galladay 2 years ago, right?
I was going to say the same thing.
Like he just exploded onto the scene. People were like, "Oh my God, where the hell did Kenny Galladay come from?" It's kind of the same thing with DJ Chark last year. Like, where the hell did DJ Chark come from? But I'll tell you what, the dude is fast as hell. Like, if you look at DJ Chark's like combine numbers, the dude ran an insane, I want to say it was like 4.48 or something like that. It was like stupid fast. And he's 6'4". Like, the dude is huge. He's not like a little person. This dude is a big dude. So when you're looking at his numbers from last year and you start talking about all of his, all of his games that he played, because obviously he missed some games last year. But if you look at the games that he played, like week 1 against the Chiefs, we all know he blew the hell up. You know what I mean? 4 for 146 and a touchdown, right? But then it was 7 for 55, 4 for 76, 4 for 44, 8 for 164, right? Like, and I'm just talking about the receiving. I'm not hitting up with the touchdowns either.
And that's why I released him. I'm like 4 for 146. Like, come on, he's not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to do. Like, that's why I was like, nah, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
Needless to say, he goes on to be like a,
top 12 guy.
Yeah, top 12 receiver.
Yeah, he was awesome. And that's the thing, like, for me, it wasn't a fluke, because if you look at the numbers, like, 3 for 43 and then 3 for 53, but then 6, 4, 8, 5. He had 2 catches against the Buccaneers, 9, 2, 4. So, I mean, like, I feel like this guy could be a top 12 guy again if you can get Gardner Minshew, right, and you take DJ Chark where he's going as, what is he going, wide receiver, I think it's like 20-something, 24?
He is 26.
26. So if he's going wide receiver 26 and you can get Gardner Minshew at the end of the draft, that might be a pairing that you're, like, in love with all season long, because, you didn't pay anything to get, the quarterback that you got, and the wide receiver that you got could end up being a top 12 guy because people just don't buy that he's that good. And I'm buying. I think he's that good.
I do too. I 100% agree. Last year he actually finished number 16, so he was just outside of wide receiver 1 in PPR leagues. But, this year, like, I mean, for a guy that finished number 16 last year to now be drafted, 10 spots later than that, I mean, the value you're getting is just ridiculous. Let's move on to the other receivers. Neither one of them are being drafted in the top 65. Actually, I think it's like even 68. You got D.D. Westbrook and Laviska Shenault. Of these two guys, which would you be more likely to take a shot on? I'm assuming Shenault, because that's exactly how I feel. I want to see Shenault play. I think that coming out of college, like, this guy's the most athletic receiver that was in this draft, and the only reason he dipped was because of an injury. But I think this dude is going to be an animal with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if you're okay, so D.D. Westbrook, I believe this is the last year of his contract. I believe. I could be wrong.
There's also Chris Conley, so I mean, you could also bring him up in here as well.
Exactly. So, but for me, Chris Conley played okay last year. I mean, we're not going to bring him in because obviously he's not going to be drafted. We're not even worried about him. But to me, Laviska Shenault could actually take over D.D. Westbrook's spot in the starting lineup. And the reason I say that is because I feel like D.D. is a good player, not a great player. And if Laviscus comes in and shows that, like, with what he showed in college, with the ball in his hand, he's just extremely dangerous, I don't know how you can keep him off the field, because they just don't have another playmaker on this team, that can do the things that Laviska Shenault can do at the wide receivers position other than DJ Chark. So I think if you have both of those guys on the field, and they're a run-heavy team already, but with Jay Gruden coming in, he could be like, you know what? I'm just going to have the two most dynamic playmakers on the field at the same time with the scary 250-pound running back that I have, and their teams to stop the running game, and I'm just going to throw it to these guys because, you know what I mean? Like, I really like Laviska Shenault as a player, and I think he's just so much more dynamic than Westbrook. I'd rather just take, Shenault and say, I'm going to run with this and see what happens.
Yep, I agree. So let's move on to tight end. They have Tyler Eifert, who they brought in. We know Tyler Eifert to be a very athletic guy that can be good but can never stay on the field. Much similar to Jay Gruden's last tight end that he used. Do you think that, Eifert could be relevant at all this year? Obviously, he's not being drafted. I doubt anybody's taking a shot on him, but do you think he is somebody that could turn out to be relevant?
I actually do. And this is the reason why. He's not... Tyler Eifert is a red zone threat just because he's 6'6". The dude coming out of college, I don't know how great his athleticism now after all the injuries that he's had, but coming out of college, this dude would climb the ladder on anyone. He was basically Gronk coming out of college. When you're talking about climbing the ladder over guys to take the ball away. You know what I mean? He was that good. So I think they brought him in more for the red zone. And my issue is that they didn't get into the red zone as often as a lot of other teams last year. But I do think Tyler Eifert, you know what I mean, could possibly be a guy that you're picking up off the waiver wire, you know what I mean, week 4 or 5. Because, you know, maybe there's an injury to your tight end or something like that. He would be a guy that I'd be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to take a shot on him. And he's been playing okay this year, and I'm just going to take a shot on him. So, because Gardner Minshew, if you watched Gardner Minshew play last year, a lot of those touchdowns that Chark got last year were high up in the air throws, and that's where Tyler Eifert excels. So, maybe a guy that you pick up off the waiver wire, but not somebody I'm drafting.
Yeah, once you've drafted Evan Ingram, and that's around the time where he's hurt for week 5.
Exactly.
All right, so let's move on to the Jags defense, who nobody is drafting, I'm assuming, and the Josh Lambo as the kicker. Another guy I don't think too many people are going to take a shot on. He seems like he's pretty good every year. I think he's a good kicker, but this offense, we just don't know how they're going to play. I mean, we apparently think they're going to be pretty good, but if they flame out, I doubt you want their kicker. So, there's other guys that you can probably draft ahead of them and feel more confident about. And that's it. That wraps up tonight's podcast. Next up will be the Texans and Titans. So that should be a pretty good one. We'll get into a couple, fantasy superstars there. So until then, peace out, guys.
Peace.